What's in a name? He was called Jesus, the name given by the angel, the name above every name. He is named Wonderful Counselor, Mighty God, Everlasting Father, Prince of Peace. Nicknames, pet names, middle names, maiden names. Say their names. What's in a name? The Truth and Reconciliation Commission's 17th call to action reads, "We call upon all levels of government to enable residential school survivors and their families to reclaim names changed by the residential school system by waiving administrative costs for a period of 5 years for the name change process and the revision of official identity documents such as birth certificates, passports, driver's licenses, health cards, status cards, and social insurance numbers." This call to action was finally implemented last spring. Reclaiming Indigenous names on Immigration, Refugees, and Citizenship Canada's identity documents is the title of the webpage that gives the information. And there it describes this call to action as to reclaim and use the name that is part of their heritage and culture on various identity documents. It's kind of shocking to me that up until this year, Indigenous people were actually not allowed to have their Indigenous names, their real names, their name on official identity documents in this country. And it is astounding that one of the barriers was administrative fees, and that suspending those fees was a significant part of the ask. So I might wonder what's in a name, but clearly our Indigenous sisters and brothers already know, or at least know something more about it than what I do. One of the most impactful podcasts that I heard this past year was an episode of Nadia Bolz-Weber's The Confessional with William Vervoet. He is a white South African anti-racism researcher and facilitator whose own family were key in the creation, implementation, and enforcement of apartheid. His grandfather, Hendrik Vervoet, is commonly regarded as the architect of apartheid and was prime minister from 1958 to 1966 when he was assassinated. In the podcast, Wilhelm describes how even as his grandfather was, quote, revered in my family and in the community that I'm from, he was hated, and he still is hated by Black South Africans, people of color, because he personifies that system. Wilhelm tells his story, what can only be described as a story of conversion, about, quote, deep grappling with what it means to be Vervoet and white and Afrikaner and a Christian. He describes encounters with, quote, his fellow Black South Africans who had this remarkable ability to share their pain, to be angry, especially when they hear the surname, because it would trigger, it would evoke. Even now, he is aware of the layers of baggage, the pain he brings with him. It's not just me walking into the room, he reflects. The moment they see my face, they see the color of my skin, the moment they hear my accent, and the moment they hear my surname, they know I come from this family and that my grandfather was prime minister. He didn't just change his name. A friend blurted out when I was telling her about the podcast soon after I'd heard it. No, he didn't. He was encouraged not to reject his past in some of those encounters with Black South Africans who became friends. When they, quote, realized I was willing to sit and listen, to engage with them, there was a remarkable generosity of spirit, a willingness to say to me, listen, Wilhelm, we're not asking you to reject your grandfather. In our culture, we respect our ancestors. His friends encouraged him to embrace, accept who he is, including his name, Vervoet, and to stand with them against racist policies that do such harm. Policies like what name is allowed on official identity documents and the administration fees charged to change it. For a few years now, I have heard struggles of church folks and former church folks, the struggles they have with the name Christian or Anglican. I've heard contemporary thought leaders, Diana Butler-Bass and Brian McLaren, both address questions of, do I stay Christian, or how can I still be Christian? How can I claim that name anymore? The questions that many people ponder as we wrestle with disappointment and disillusionment in the church and its leaders. Specifically in our church, the debates and frankly, the bungling of the acceptance of equal marriage, along with the role of LGBTQ people, has proved embarrassing and disheartening. Add to that this year, our increasing awareness of our role in residential schools, and it makes sense that many wonder how we can continue to bear the name Christian or Anglican. I think the only possible answers involve both paradox and conversion. There's a paradox in accepting the identity our name represents, while also actively working to change the negative, the unjust, the even evil things done in that name. Conversion comes when we're willing to listen, really listen to the pain that we or our ancestors or others in our community who share our name, the pain they've caused, we have caused. Conversion comes when we engage without defensiveness or trying to justify, and allow the gracious love of God to change our hearts and minds and to guide us into what we do next. Only then can we incorporate our imperfection, the imperfection of those who came before us, our ancestors, those around us still, to incorporate our imperfection into our identity. Claiming the name Christian, carrying the name of Jesus, includes getting things wrong sometimes, right alongside our good intentions and extraordinary acts of love. The act of naming is meant to be an act of blessing. It's my hope that as our Indigenous sisters and brothers change their official identity documents to reflect the heritage and culture of their real names, that they will know blessing. It is also my hope that this year, 2022, we too will claim or reclaim the identities inherent in our names and know God's blessing in the process.